work for the Department of Education. A learning difficulty is really often associated with a young person who has high stress levels as well. So the higher the stress level, the more it will trigger your learning difficulty. If you go into a stress response in a classroom, you'll start to produce adrenaline and possibly cortisol if there's an ongoing stress response. And that will start to actually impact on the connection, the synaptic connection in the brain. So when you're looking for memory or when you're looking to create new memories of the things that you're learning, if you're producing a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, it will actually impede that process. If you're producing a lot of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter in the brain that makes us all curious and excitable and happy to do things, then you're actually going to be facilitating new neural synapse connections. And that's the kind of environment we want kids to be learning in. So that's why playing and having a really good time with your peers and your teachers is a really effective way to learn things. It lowers the stress level, it makes a young person more open to the learning process, and that's where the dogs come in, and I think that's why it's so powerful. So for a young person who, especially if they've got a trauma background or a neglect or abuse background, they become hypersensitive to stress in the classroom. It's almost like they're waiting for an opportunity to be humiliated. It makes them more reticent to step forward and really take the risk to learn, and it also makes them a little bit more inclined. If they've got any learning difficulties or stresses in the system that could impede their concentration, that'll be heightened as well. When a young person has an experience of stress, what they do is they go into a fight-flight response. And in that fight-flight response, adrenaline will be produced through the body. So the limbic part of the brain, the central part of the emotional part of the brain, is a bit like the smoke detector, and that'll set off a stress response. And the young person then is locating the majority of their brain activity back in the brain stem. And I say to the kids that the brain stem is the earthworm part of the brain. It doesn't do any high scholastic thinking, it just does survival. And how am I going to get through this? And am I going to fight for my way out, or am I going to flee? So if a young person's operating from the brainstem part of their brain when they're in a classroom setting, there's no opportunity for them to do conscious thinking and reasoning and to actually come up with higher learning. It's just really a survival mechanism. And that's where a lot of our reactive behaviours and things come from as well. But if the young person's with the dog and the volunteer and they're really, really relaxed and they're feeling happy, they're going to move out of that brain stem, come back into their frontal lobes, into the cerebral cortex, the thinking part of the brain, and then they can start to process the material and be really actively learning in a really positive way. So it's really taking the stress mechanism out of the equation of learning and putting the play back into it as well.